Hello everybody, this is RRPG here, and I'm here to present another 2 cents video on the 2 cents block for you all. For today's video, this has been something I've been kind of wanting to do for quite some time, and I've been having a hard time with determining when it was the right time for me to bring about an opinion piece like this. It wasn't until I read an article on PlayerEssence.com where a freelance writer states its opinion on why Nintendo isn't getting a lot of third-party support on their platforms. Let me read you a few paragraphs with where this is going before I delve into this rant from beginning to end. Ask anyone why the Wii U doesn't have third-party support, and they will tell you it's because the Wii U is selling poorly, the Wii U is underpowered, third-party games don't sell on Nintendo consoles, or the Wii U is hard to develop for. While there's some truth in what they say, I think that those are just excuses from third-party publishers. I think the real reason why they don't support Nintendo is because they are afraid of them and their fans. Allow me to explain. Third-party publishers don't want Nintendo on top. They don't want Nintendo consoles to be number one. It's not that they don't respect Nintendo, but it's the fact that they would be harder for Sony and Microsoft to compete with Nintendo if they had strong third-party support. Imagine the Wii U being the cheapest console this generation with all of your favorite third-party games, first-party games, and free online. Who wouldn't want to buy a Wii U if it had all those things? I know diehard PlayStation and Xbox fans wouldn't, but those who are unbiased would buy one without a doubt. This is one of the reasons why third-party publishers are skipping the Wii U, because they don't want it to dominate the competition like the Wii once did, and like the 3DS is doing to the PlayStation Vita. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. Activision releases a new Call of Duty game every year. The Wii U has 2 COD games already, and it seems like it's getting the latest COD game as well. But Activision has yet to announce the Wii U version of Advanced Warfare. They will probably announce it when the game is almost ready to release. Why are they doing this? Because they don't want dedicated COD fans to know that they can play COD online for free on the Wii U. A lot of them would buy a Wii U just for COD, and Activision doesn't want that. Other factors like the competition being powerful to third parties' bad history with Nintendo, as are some games getting delayed like Rayman Legends because of their fear toward the big N, are all in there. But I do agree for the most part. You know why I've done those videos about the stupid crap that third parties do when it comes to their content on Nintendo platforms being either gimped, delayed, or shunned? This is exactly what I have been hitting at for quite some time, with how low these third-party publishers and developers have sunk with their games for the past 4 years as of right now. Third parties are under this shtick where they feel that they move games onto a platform that isn't high in quality to where their sales are mostly met, but that's okay. They gimp ports of games on particular platforms just to treat the current install base like garbage, but that's okay. Or people are just going by what these third parties say with no valid argument to back them up, but that's okay too. That can't function. That cannot work anymore. In this world we live in, and this state where the video game industry has gotten so much worse than 1983. Whenever third-party publishers or developers do things just to get their way, they use politics as a means to protect themselves with PR nonsense, sacrifice quality just so that they can rush their games out the door in order to try and get their money back, or even use coward tactics to see if people usually care about having their games on other platforms. This is nothing but ridiculous, epic, legendary, and infamous when you think about it. Let us talk about some of these things in greater detail since we are on this topic. When we look at third parties like EA, Konami, Square Enix, or even Bethesda for what they do, they are the ones who dictate what platforms their games go on and how long they are to be developed. Before 2010, this wasn't that much of an issue before companies started to be a bit more ambitious with the type of games they create or milk every year. For the most part, many of these big games end up on Sony and Microsoft's platforms with no love or regard for the Nintendo platforms whatsoever. We have seen many of these games like Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, Broken Field, the Final Fantasy XIII saga, and others be on those platforms where some of them are not quality products, as they retain a numerous amount of bugs and glitches to where they are probably unplayable. Now granted, some of them can actually be fun to the experience like Skyrim, but it's like they don't care because they are trying to meet the demands from consumers. What consumers don't know is that other factors may make them have a blind eye as to what could actually be there. Stuff like paid DLC, microtransactions, DRM, and on-disc DLC has affected many of these games that they shouldn't even have been a part of the games to begin with. Let me give you good examples of games that are ruined because of these things. Dead Space 3, Street Fighter Cross Tekken, Resident Evil 6, and almost every single mobile game that utilizes microtransactions like candies such as Final Fantasy All the Bravest. When third parties resort to this kind of crap, you know they are going to get heavily scrutinized and ostracized by gamers for this kind of thing. When I referred to Street Fighter Cross Tekken and Resident Evil 6, there was on-disc DLC where characters and costumes were already locked into the game's coding, that it was possible to unlock them with hacks, which I have no ill will towards anyone who does that kind of thing to those games, because the stuff about locking features by bringing about numerous patches and software updates to make the features available is nothing but bollocks. You want to know something else that adds only more fuel to the fire? Some games that have story-based DLC end up being chopped up into pieces in order to charge more for that content. Example, you may ask? Take a look at Castlevania Lords of Shadow with the Reverie and Resurrection downloadable content. Reverie was 4 levels with no boss fight, while Resurrection was the boss fight that expanded 2 levels to finish the story of Lords of Shadow. But both didn't really do anything to add to the plot or importance to the overall storyline. Guess how much they cost when they both released? $10 each. Would you tolerate for something like that? Hell no you wouldn't. Take a look at a game done right with story-based DLC. Resident Evil 5. It may have suffered from many problems that alienated from what Resident Evil was all about, but the DLC for Lost in Nightmares and Desperate Escape were priced at a reasonable amount of $5 each. A much better offer. Stuff like this has to be done right, but EA, Ubisoft, Konami, and Square Enix are taking these measures that they only care about money and not about the satisfaction of the consumers, which the latter has to be first priority over money. Let us shift gears and talk about the Nintendo platforms not getting any love from third parties. Third-party publishers will bring up the idea that the Wii U's install base is small, released games that have long been released on other platforms, GIMP ports on newer multi-platform games that miss out on key features to gain more consumers for an install base, go by the belief that the Wii U is underpowered and hard to develop for. If you ask me, they are nothing but blatant excuses because these PR stunts only shows a third party's true colors. They are scared of Nintendo's platforms because of their games and their consumers. They do not want to have the big end come in first place with strong first and third party games because their fear and worries usually make them do something that is far more terrible. Rayman Legends and Deus Ex Human Revolution Director's Cut are 2 games I constantly talk about, as they are the epitome of the third party's immature and unethical nature when they want to treat a certain install base or set of customers like garbage. They do not want to spend the time, money, or effort in making a decent game since they only worry about making their bottom line on a yearly basis with rush products because they feel that their games won't stand up to the likes of Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, Metroid, Mario Kart, or even Smash Bros. Even some of their claims about why certain games from third parties not coming to Nintendo platforms are ridiculous, but I honestly believe that the publishers from third parties are the ones calling the shots and not the people who develop the games. If you want to blame a quality developer for not bringing a game to a Nintendo platform, blame the publisher and not the person. Developers who have shown appreciation to Nintendo platforms say that it is very simple, full of potential, and its architecture is close and even better than that of the Xbox 360, where it takes just as long to develop for than the others. If customers believe in that mentality from third-party publishers, we have another problem on our hands. Speaking of quality, that is the next issue we are going to discuss that most third-party games have failed to meet every year. We all know that the only side of the industry that rushes games on a yearly basis has been third-party companies. Many games from companies like Capcom, Activision, Namco Bandai, and EA are put out on store shelves every year that it seems that they waste all that money of game development to a product that is the equivalent of a quick, cheap game on a smart device. Personally, I feel that the beginning of this downward trend in quality came from Square Enix with Final Fantasy XIII in 2010. Granted, people actually may like the game, but there were so many problems such as poor quality in the game design, gameplay, narrative, and presentation that it made me feel like I was playing Final Fantasy X all over again, but ending up being far much worse than that. Final Fantasy XIII feels like a long hallway between different areas on the different maps, which makes it the running gag why everyone refers to the game as Final Hallway 13 because of its heavy, linear nature. Dragon Age 2 and Mass Effect 3 from BioWare and EA were probably the next thing to come in the lieu of poor quality third-party games. Dragon Age 2 suffered immensely as it was released with generally favorable reviews instead of the critical acclaim it received with the original. The problem was because of its overly generic nature, as there were no characters that were memorable to the story, the map of the original was recycled with no new environments, and the combat was much more simplified and casual than the overly intricate learning curve that BioWare's RPGs have been heavily praised for. Taking a step back was not in the best interest, as stuff like this made BioWare pay a heavy price. And man, did it only get worse with Mass Effect 3 when it came to the narrative in its ending. Endings rendering the lead character's choices as inconsequential, a lack of closure, lore contradictions with massive plot holes, character and narrative inconsistencies, the absence of a final boss, and inconsistencies between statements by BioWare staff during the game's development and the form the endings ended up taking. It wasn't until the release of the extended ending DLC where the praise was returned, but many thought the original release should not have been what it should. When crap like this doesn't go a publisher's way, they will resort to making games on other platforms like smart devices just to try and get back quick profits. Take a look at what EA did as of recent. They pulled off all support on the 3DS and PlayStation Vita platforms in favor of mobile development because they want quick money. We know that Capcom created a mobile development studio after Monster Hunter 4's success in Japan, but I feel that it is necessary for them because of how Capcom's financial status is like, as I have been constantly talking about. Another thing is that when you look at a third-party game for what it is, and realize that they are overly ambitious to where the full game isn't released where certain features or DLC end up being missing. Stuff like that happens as companies may resort to releasing a Game of the Year edition or Complete Edition that includes all the missing elements to make even more money for those who didn't buy the game for the first time. It's stupid, yes, but how is it that a game that doesn't seem finished continues to receive numerous patches or updates even when newer elements become available down the road? How do games like that end up getting past a first-party company's quality assurance guidelines? It's very baffling. Now, I know some of you may say that there are third-party games that are very sharp and full of quality, which I do agree to an extent, but when has a third-party game like that ever shown any lasting appeal? The last time I checked, games like Grand Theft Auto 5 and Watch Dogs feel average in the delivery that I don't find them to do well in the long term. I know I may end up getting a lot of flack for this, but I do not consider Grand Theft Auto 5 as Game of the Year material, or even a quality game in general. How much longer are we going to see a GTA game take place in a fictional or non-fictional US city? How much longer is the series going to keep going with lesser experimentation and all these realistic portrayals in a game? It's been done to death since GTA 3, and it hasn't been that different ever since. Watch Dogs, on the other hand, had great elements for a sandbox game, like with the hacking elements, but it doesn't feel like a true next-generation experience that Ubisoft promised on. The story is flat, the gameplay is average, and Aiden Pierce is amongst the cliched anti-heroes where he is very biased about how women in the game are treated. As I said, I agree that there are third-party games that have quality, even something like Metal Gear Solid, but newer ones are continually going to be overshadowed by the overly ambitious routes that doesn't succeed where past games left off. Speaking of which, big franchises like Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed are milked to death about every single year. Since Modern Warfare and Assassin's Creed 2, both franchises have seen an installment on a yearly basis with no improvement whatsoever. Despite Ubisoft saying they will make sure each Assassin's Creed game is of high quality and not milked, I find that to be sort of an oxymoron, as we have seen a new installment after Assassin's Creed 2 launched. Call of Duty has been Activision's bread and butter, as people will buy that game on a yearly basis for the online multiplayer matches, but I pray to God that Destiny takes that down because it deserves to, as the newer games from said franchises look almost identical with a few new bells and whistles in every installment. Powerful technology has always been a strong preference for third-party publishers, as it seems that they take advantage of utilizing that for more of eye candy and less on decent gameplay. There are games like the Metal Gear franchise that maintain balance on both sides, but it's become more of the opposite with many games these days, especially from Western developers. No joke. I see every game done by a third party that looks very pretty in visuals that they act more like tech demos than actual games. The new Rainbow Six acts more like a tech demo to reality. The Last of Us, even though it is published by Sony, acts like a tech demo where the gameplay is horrible. And I don't care what the Sony fanbase thinks, as I feel that game is largely overrated. Some newer IPs that seem like it has a leg in the market will continue to be overshadowed if popular franchises continue to get milk or made within the same time frames as the underdogs. Homefront by THQ did well in reviews, but did poorly in commercial status because of the likes of the more popular FPS games releasing the same year. Ironically, even newer games in a similar genre from others does tend to get screwed over, with Project Cars probably being the next game to suffer that fate. I know there are those who were negative on my take on why I feel that Project Cars will not do well on all platforms since the Wii U did not release alongside them, but I stand by what I say whether there are those who disagree with me or not. I'll say this again. Project Cars is releasing in November alongside The Crew from Ubisoft, Drive Club from Sony, and Forza Horizon 2 from Microsoft. Guess who is going to get stomped this November? The answer is quite obvious, and I'm also afraid that Project Cars will not do as well on the Wii U too, if it takes a long time for it to release on there when the others will be around for quite some time to where they will probably have a price cut. On another personal note, I had people telling me that the game would be on the Wii U in a couple months after its release, but all that Bandai Namco said is that it is coming in 2015. That is a couple months after the game's release on the other platforms, yes, but they never did give an exact date. It could be anywhere from the beginning of 2015 to the very end of that year. Grid Autosport got destroyed because of Mario Kart 8, despite it getting mixed reviews over the more successful game. The consensus has been pretty clear since the beginning that no one wants to buy a same number of games from the same number of genres on a yearly basis, because they go for the ones that have more backing and recognition toward consumers, as that creates oversaturation. Speaking of which, oversaturation has been a huge pandemic within gaming next to the likes of the anti-Nintendo bias from third-party companies and the fanboy wars plaguing the internet. How many more games are we going to see that are nothing but shooters, sports, RTS, MMOs, party, and realistic games where there is hardly any variety in other sectors? Games that are less popular end up on the short end of the stick because they mostly end up competing with the more popular IPs. Legendary and Turning Point Fall of Liberty are two of the worst FPS games, and games in general, that have released during the 7th generation of gaming because of them being another FPS game and for how unpolished they are. What's even worse than that is the fact that budgets in games have been getting way out of hand, as it pretty much dictates whether a developer is viable to still be around or not. A very great example is Blur from Activision, as the development team, Bizarre Creations, ended up getting shut down after that game released. And that game was very fun for an arcade racing game. So why did Bizarre Creations need to be shut down? Finally, I said that games with huge budgets tend to get overrated because of the amount of ambition that is placed toward a game, and this seems like it comes from most Western developers, as I mentioned. With quality out of the way, let us talk about the most shameful tactic that third-party developers and publishers will pull on install bases that are left out of a game's release. Port begging. This has got to be one of the most cowardly tactics that should not even be immoral when it comes to developing titles. From what is currently going on, this seems to be mostly happening with the Wii U install base, as they are constantly left in the dust with games that seem like a great fit for the platform, such as Strider HD, Kingdom Hearts 3, Final Fantasy 15, and even the HD remaster of the Resident Evil remake from 2002. Speaking of Strider HD, that had to be one of the most controversial acts of Double Helix Games before being bought out by Amazon. People thought that Strider HD would be a great fit on the Wii U since both last generation and next generation consoles and the PC were getting it. Guess what? Double Helix demanded Wii U owners to port beg. Why? Because they want the install bases and sales to be higher than they are currently. So let me get this straight. The Wii U and 3DS have people who are followers of said franchises that wish for games like the ones they adore to end up on a different platform so that it can help the install base grow, but you hold them hostage in saying that it needs to get bigger? How much bigger can you possibly mean, even if the Wii U could outsell the PlayStation 4? Just how big do you need it to be, guys? You are acting like babies and hypocrites when a platform is there for you to develop on and not to stray away from. Why can't you swallow your pride and embrace that feeling, as one of those games could have actually had the potential to garner in more of an install base than you demanding it? Another prime example is how badly Hideo Kojima handled the criticisms of Metal Gear Solid 5 not coming to the Wii U. MGS5 has the ability to utilize smartphones and tablets for all sorts of things in the gameplay. However, the Wii U gamepad has the touchscreen that resembles a tablet. Why couldn't they do that instead? Instead, they are placing those features on things like the Xbox Smart Glass and PlayStation Vita. He even said that the Wii U would need its own MGS game to utilize the gamepad in every way, as he couldn't figure out what to do with it for the Phantom Pain. You see, it's stuff like this that makes people in third-party companies become more infamous than well-received for their statements when they know that how they handle a left-out install base is wrong. This just shows how low that Kojima has sunk as a game developer for being Konami's lapdog, but I honestly believe that this is coming from Konami themselves. On another note, third parties don't want to acknowledge Nintendo as a competitor because they whine and cry that their games don't sell when the first-party titles from Nintendo actually do. Guess whose fault that is for treating them and their consumers like crap? EA's own developer from the Madden series stated that all Nintendo fans do is buy Mario and Zelda, nothing else. You know the reason why games from EA don't sell on Nintendo consoles at this moment? It's because you gimp them and make crappy ports that aren't optimized on a Nintendo platform. You aren't giving enough time and effort to make a quality product like Nintendo, and that is why you guys are sinking deeper and deeper into obscurity. How long is it going to be before you realize this? You end up going to the PlayStation and Xbox platforms because you see that neither Sony or Microsoft has a lot of first-party support on their consoles, despite Phil Spencer trying to bring the gaming division of Xbox back to its former glory, which I praise and applaud him for. But when that curtain changes, you'll do the same thing to them, to what you are doing to Nintendo right now. Ironically, it's like you are scared of the fanboys as they partly dictate what should come onto a platform and what shouldn't, but that's another can of worms that I have a huge rant about for another time. In a sense, it's like they don't acknowledge third parties either. When it comes to respective install bases, they acknowledge them for the exclusives as they are the things with what grows a platform and an install base. What's even more strange is that anything that Nintendo fans port beg for, they end up being left in the dust while those from others end up getting their wish. Now, it doesn't work all the time if a first party ends up publishing a third party game for the platform, like what Nintendo is doing with Bayonetta 2 and Devil's Third, while Microsoft publishes Rise of the Tomb Raider for the Xbox consoles. But others that do end up exclusive first on the Nintendo platforms has this huge outcry from people who want those games on other platforms, and they got their wish with both Rayman Legends and Deus Ex Human Revolution Director's Cut, sadly. Strong figures within game development have even formed their own independent studios because of the crap that third-party publishers are pulling. People like Shinji Mikami, Hideki Kamiya, and Atsushi Inaba formed Platinum Games because of them being fed up with Capcom's crap. It's also a no-brainer that they end up raising the white flag with third parties because of how they constantly release newer games of a popular franchise every single year. Jason West, Vince Zampella, and Robert Bowling from Infinity Ward are long gone because of them getting tired of Activision's crap with the Call of Duty franchise on a yearly basis. As we were talking about independent developers, these are people who have grown to dislike the shift from third-party publishers as they want to be developers only and not a group where they have to follow their rules all the time. Now, this also equates to studios in the industry that make games on big scales like Platinum Games and Concept. Yacht Club Games has become more independent to support gamers who want quality titles with newer ideas. WayForward Technology supports all platforms as they acknowledge all sides of the competition. And others want to appeal to everyone as possible than just a select few platforms that everyone else is doing. We are currently in this phase where innovation with newer ideas can rise and triumph over the oversaturation of AAA games we have seen year in and year out. However, someone like Peter Molyneux tends to think otherwise as he says that it won't last forever. That may be true, but this is coming from an overrated developer who has constantly underpromised his goals and showcased underwhelming results in his work with the Fable series at Lionhead Studios, so he really shouldn't be judged for that because of his credibility in game development right now. Third parties are bleeding money every single year because of them hemorrhaging large development costs like crazy with the likes of making games multi-platform, and that isn't funny. Third parties are bleeding money every single year because of them hemorrhaging large development costs like crazy with the likes of making games multi-platform, that it isn't funny. I know you guys support multi-platforms, but exclusivity does matter, guys. Why this is a bane to you is frickin' ridiculous. I plan on buying an Xbox One when Scalebound from Platinum Games launches. I plan on buying Tales of Hearts R when it releases since I have a PlayStation Vita. I plan on buying Sonic Boom since it is exclusive on the Nintendo platforms. I plan on buying whatever exclusive third-party game that comes out in the future on the PlayStation 4, because I want there to be competition. Indie developers, on the other hand, care about the quality product with their own ideas than just wasting away their own creativity with half-assed games in the end, while third parties only worry about sales numbers if things don't go their way, as that money should be used on more necessary things, like Capcom bringing out a new Mega Man for crying out loud. Independent developers, on the other hand, share the same philosophy as Nintendo, as they want to make a quality product that appeals to everyone in the end. Shovel Knight succeeded this feat just recently. Armacroc from Doug to Naple may be the next game to hit big. Mighty No. 9 will probably be the next to follow suit, and sprite-based games have been on the rise for retro gamers once again. These new ideas like taking a step back in visuals and resources to make games based on limitations like the old days helps keep the industry fresh and alive, while third parties do the complete opposite with taking desperate measures to get the almighty dollar. If you ask me, third-party developers and publishers are probably the ones who are going to go under first because of this, and it's really sad as many of those that I once respected for making quality games when I grew up have entered this phase to where they are about to cease to exist, with Capcom being the prime example. How is it that we have entered this phase where third parties are not taking a step back, assessing the situation more thoroughly, and realize that their ideas being more ambitious over the other is killing them as it is not doing them any better? So here's the last thing in my rant. And this is one where I feel that many of these reasons are why they are still around. Nintendo has succeeded very well in the industry, despite what critics and skeptics have said about them, and they look at what is conservatively best in order for the industry to grow, as they are a minority that actually do care about making it a better place than the downward slope it has gotten them. When it comes to Nintendo's development philosophy, they become extremely conservative with the development costs and use what available resources they have in order to make their games very appealing, even if it's weak hardware compared to the PS4 and Xbox One, when it actually could turn out better in both visuals and especially gameplay. Gameplay has still become a very successful feat for Nintendo, because that is what keeps the value of a game very high when it comes to that charm. Some may argue that third parties also do all that too, but there are a select few that actually do that. Not everyone is in the same boat. Heavy game development from, or with their help if they were a publisher, have led to some very strong quality titles. With The Wonderful 101, it is a strong quality title, despite the complaints critics have given it. Sonic Lost World has some redeeming value because of Nintendo stepping in to help Sega and Sonic team. Bayonetta 2 and Devil's Third are going to be no different, as the developers like Hideki Kamiya and Tomonobu Itagaki share the same vision as Nintendo. Even if some of those games don't end up selling well at their launch, they will continue to sell in the long term. Take a look at Super Mario Galaxy. The game was released in 2007, and it managed to sell nearly 13 million copies within that 7-year time span it has been out. That is a very impressive feat for an exclusive Wii title. They don't worry about things like sales numbers or meeting the criteria of an immediate deadline, because their work truly pays off in the end, whereas third parties are the opposite, as they only worry about sales numbers and bleed money toward things that are ridiculous and mostly unnecessary. Stuff like HD remasters, games from newer and existing IPs that try to take a piece of another franchise's pie, like how Resident Evil 6 tried to act more like Call of Duty than a survival horror game. Besides, you hardly ever see any glitches or game-breaking bugs in the finished product of a Nintendo game. But even though there might be at least one bug or glitch, it becomes a really quick fix through a patch from the big end themselves. Partnerships with third-party developers and publishers is also a huge thing, as some games have actually led to some third-party games succeeding. Nintendo has been teaming up with Level 5 for quite a long time with any of their games they bring to the Nintendo handhelds by being a publisher, and they continue to do so with Fantasy Life coming out this October. Really looking forward to that game, by the way. Newer ones that Nintendo has down the pipeline after Hyrule Warriors, Bayonetta 2, and Shin Megami Tensei Cross Fire Emblem, as well as Devil's Third, will be a testament of that, as Satoru Iwata and his company wants their third-party partners to succeed. Despite some flaws that Nintendo has as a company, like not embracing online well for some games, having cross-buy between platforms through the Nintendo Network, or even deactivating the region locking on their platforms, Nintendo's development toward games still remain very strong and hold up well for today's standards. You know how third parties like to shoehorn DLC where you have to buy them with your own cash? Nintendo hardly does that, only if it is done for the right reason, and they mostly have DLC that is free all the time. Their relations with independent developers has been phenomenal, and it only continues to grow every single day. Now, I know that people say that Nintendo should be a bit more aggressive with hyping their games, and I do agree to that, but overhyping is another factor that shouldn't be done, as Nintendo wants to try to keep things under wraps so that the experiences in their products are enjoyable. I never want to try and get hyped about a game because that can ruin the experience if I know what is all there. And that's why I never tried to hype myself when it came to games like Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII on the PSP, Bravely Default, or even Shovel Knight, as I want to be surprised by what the games offer. If Nintendo overhyped their products, they'll be overrated for all the money they had to hype their games like crazy. If there was one thing that has bugged people about Nintendo, then it's that they are prone to delay their games until they are ready. It sucks, yes, but I want to enjoy a game where it is completely done. And it is also a reason why I'm looking forward to Destiny from Bungie next month, even if it's not on a Nintendo platform. For many of these things that Nintendo does to survive and do what is right, they are constantly doomed or ostracized for their strides. But they continue to answer right back into the faces of critics, fearmongers, and doomsayers, and this crap has been going on since they originally came about in the late 1800s. For the NES, people doomed Nintendo because of how third parties weren't getting enough games on a yearly basis. People were dooming Nintendo for the SNES since Sega had a stranglehold on the Western market. People have been dooming Nintendo for the Nintendo 64 because of them using cartridges and not CDs as the optical mediums. People have been dooming the GameCube because it didn't get all the support from both sides like what Sony has been getting with the PlayStation 2. People have been dooming the Wii because of it being less powerful than its competitors and having more of an appearance of a casual platform. How much more doomed can Nintendo be when they actually end up doing well every single time they do something, and then others doom them for that matter? It is getting tiring, disrespectful, and prejudiced, as it seems like there are those who don't want them to exist. Another thing people say is that they milk their games like everyone else, but I say they only make a game from a long-lasting franchise in case an idea actually works for that property. That is why we continue to see newer games from the likes of Mario and Zelda, because of how Nintendo continues to innovate with newer ideas. Super Mario Sunshine worked with FLUDD, and the Super Mario Galaxy games worked because of the anti-gravity physics. Diddy Kong Racing from Rareware and Nintendo worked because Diddy Kong seemed like he could fit in the setting and gameplay style that Rare was going for originally. Now that Microsoft has them on a leash, it seems the magic that Rare had has been completely lost, although Phil Spencer is trying to get them back on top. Speaking of Rare, past partners that worked with Nintendo shared the same philosophy in making a great product on any platform, and that is why many of Rare's games became smash hits on the Nintendo platforms because of this. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have the likes of Donkey Kong Country, Killer Instinct, Banjo-Kazooie, Conker's Bad Fur Day, or even GoldenEye 007 on the Nintendo 64 as well as Donkey Kong 64. Nintendo doesn't need to money hat third parties that demand them for that kind of thing, because it only shows their weakness and cowardice as a game publisher and developer, and that's why you see their games end up on the other sides of the competition because of how far too lenient that Sony and Microsoft have been to them when developing on their platforms. Nintendo will only go to a developer and publish their games for them unless it actually makes sense, and if it wasn't for them, then games like Bayonetta 2 and Devil's Third would have ended up in obscurity. Money may be important to a business, but the thing that Nintendo goes for is growing with their customers, because seeing their smile and appreciation for the quality in their products and content will make people come back and buy more of their games. Money, on the other hand, only equates to greed, as only being stuck in that stigma sacrifices the quality and credibility of a company, and Nintendo is not even like that. They have a lot of money, yes, but they don't worry about that at first, as they care about seeing a customer's satisfaction is top priority, where third parties only care about money and nothing else. Speaking of which, all the doomists and naysayers like to say that Nintendo is doomed all the time, but the reality is that they are not going anywhere, as they struggle like a bear to get things moving along in the right path. A final thing to keep in mind is that when it comes to Nintendo's games, they look at things from a worldly perspective and not just one select demographic, like most third-party games try to make their games more under a Western standpoint than being worldly like them in Keiji Inafune. They make games for all people and for all genres, as they are for everyone and not just for families or kids. And people who say that Nintendo is a kiddie company where they make kiddie games is derogative, prejudiced, and very, very disrespectful, because it only shows the immaturity and fickleness that the gaming community has become for quite some time. So in the end, you can tell how fed up I am with third parties on why they haven't been succeeding well in the short term, and this could turn out to be one of the reasons that they may end up being finished for sticking to their morals and codes in game development. While it may seem like it is currently true from what is all going on, I really don't think they necessarily have to stay as they are in the long run. I want them to succeed as much as first parties like Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony, because the right competition from all of us means that we all win as gamers. But as long as certain factors like showing bias to people of an install base to doing unethical practices just to strive only on money has got to stop. And this is my final call out to all third-party publishers and developers out there. And for the love of God, toward the people of Rockstar, Bethesda, Take-Two, Capcom, Bandai Namco, Tecmo Koei, Konami, Ubisoft, EA, and Activision. Pay attention to Nintendo. Learn how to make a great game from Nintendo. They are just as important as their competitors, and their platforms are yours to develop on. You really need to get outside the box with how you portray them, and know from them with how a game is supposed to be fun, instead of just being attached to money in specific franchises. If anything, publishers from third-party companies should go over to Nintendo of Japan to stay with them for a week, or maybe even a month, with knowing how to make a great game, because there's just something that many of these companies, like what Square Enix is going for, is not currently working. Everything from game development and how to put in really strong quality assurance into a product are the keys with what will make your game a success. Now, I know that each region has a branch that is mostly consisted of publishing duties, but it's not enough. Learning things from a secondary source is not enough. If third parties can come to realize that they are wrong and learn a thing or two from a company really prone to game development like Nintendo, I think we will see a significant change and renaissance in the video game industry to the likes that we have never seen before, and I pray for that day to come in the end. Don't let your pride get the best of you, as we want you to succeed and not die for what you did wrong, but it will end up like that if you don't act right away. I really wish for better days coming for you guys, but I can't stay that way as long as you continue to act like what you do at this current moment in time. Alright guys, that is all with my rant and call out about this long subject. It was very long, yes, but I think I got my point across. And for those of you who are wondering before I end off this video, yes, I am playing The Legend of Zelda 3 Triforce of the Gods, or what is known over here in the West as The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past on the Super Famicom. Well, I'm playing it on an adapter on my SNES, but yeah, it's still the same great game, but there's a lot of Japanese kanji that I really can't read, but hey, I still like it. I'm collecting a lot of Super Famicom imports from Japan, and it's going to continue to grow in the long run. Oh, and by the way, if you want to see a picture of me holding my cartridge, then here you go. Anyway, I want to know what you guys think. Do you feel that third-party companies need to change their ways with how they develop games? Or do you think they are just fine with the way they are? Be sure to rate this video as well as leaving your positive and negative feedback down in the comments. Also, be sure to hit that subscribe button as more support from you guys means that more content is coming from me in the future that you won't find anywhere else. And until next time, this is Double RPG signing out by saying Godspeed and game on, gamers. Have a good one.
You